is happening, everybody? All right, so a question I get asked a lot is, what platform should I start my venture into modding cars? And the typical way that this question will come across, it basically goes like this. I've got $15, $20, $25,000, really want to start getting into this. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Family's into this, whatever the case is. Guys just basically looking for directions. And normally it's guys with some type of a background or at least knowledge of modding cars, which is basically what my channel's more or less, aiming at in terms of audience. But look, here's the thing. If you're into this, you almost already know the answer to that question. Look, if you're going to get started in modding cars, you've got to get started with cars that are mod friendly, relatively inexpensive, and will be durable enough to not break your heart in the process of breaking your bank. So let's get started with some spoilers here. First of all, there's not going to be one Mopar on this list. Sorry, Mopar fans, but the simple fact is that any Mopar worth buying at this stage is going to be a little bit too expensive to just buy in general. But not only that, but modding Mopars is more expensive in general. You got to pay the Mopar tax, right? And because of that, they just don't make the list. I'm going to talk about this in terms of shooting for about a $20,000 budget, which is kind of the medium of where guys would come to me with a budget for the car and the mods. So where do you get started, right? Okay, well, first of all, Gen 5 Camaro. Look, you can still find those in pretty good shape for about 17 grand on Craigslist, just on a quick search. The problem with the Gen 5 Camaro is that there's a ton of them, which means there's a lot of them that have been ragged out. But if you find a nice one, you can get them still at a bargain, which will leave a little bit of money left over for mods. Long tube headers, an intake, and a throttle body are a great start, along with a very solid tune to have a car that is a lot of fun. But they're a little bit on the expensive side, so you might have to actually extend your budget to probably that $25,000 range. Well, what about something that's not going to stretch the budget so much? Well, you've got a couple of choices. The first choice would be a GTO, and again, LS power, just like the Camaro. And in this case, you can find a good GTO for about, I don't know, 10 grand, 12 grand. You can find them for a little bit less, but again, beware. I mean, use your common sense here. If it's too good to be true, it's either ragged out or it's blown up. So just know that going into it. So what are the downsides of the GTO? Well, there's really not a lot. I love GTOs, as a matter of fact. The only downside, some will say, well, you can't put a wide tire in the back of it. They're a little bit cramped and all of that. Oh, and the weight. Okay, sure. But we're talking about getting into modding cars, and they're relatively easy to work on. You can make big power with them, and you'll have something that's a little bit different from everybody else. It's pretty cool to roll up with a GTO in a sea of Camaros. So just don't let that one slip you by, and don't forget about it. It's a car that a lot of guys do tend to forget about, which is a real shame. They're a really nice car. I would suggest going with one with the 6-liter as opposed to the 5.7, but if you can find a clean 5.7, it's a great way to get started. You just have more options with that 6-liter, especially in terms of making larger power numbers. And what's next after that? Well, yeah, it's going to make me cringe here. C5 Corvette. Damn it. Look, you can find a decent C5 Corvette floating around out there for about 12 grand, 15 grand. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit ragged out, but it's still a Corvette. And damn if they don't have aftermarket support for days, and they're easy to work on. Now, granted, it's a great platform if you want to do a little bit of everything. But the issue is, with a Corvette, you're kind of splitting hairs here a little bit between budget and the end result. What I mean by that is, it's easy to find an inexpensive Corvette, but it's very expensive to get an inexpensive Corvette to get into good shape. Most of those things are fairly ragged out if you're picking them up for around that 14, $15,000 mark, and you don't want to be the guy rolling around in a vet that's just ragged out. So at any rate, it's an option. They are the darling of open course racing. Most of those guys just gut them anyway and go just flog the hell out of them. They're a great package. It's basically the American Miata, if you want to think of it like that, because the only brand that I've seen almost equal Miata or Mazda is the brand of Corvette. And let's be real, it's got its own brand. Yeah, it's Chevrolet, but it's a Corvette. So there's that car. In terms of mods, I mean, they take to mods great. Just remember that you're dealing with a vehicle with a torque tube. You're dealing with a car that's not going to be as easy to work on, especially if something goes haywire with the transmission. Keep that in the back of your head. Something goes wrong with that, and your labor bill is going to kick y'all ass. So just remember that going into Corvette. It's got a lot of upshot, but it can get really pricey if things go south. So, where's the Mustang in all of this, right? Well, here's the deal with the Mustang. First of all, if you're going to buy a Mustang GT to get started with modding, you're going to have to get one with a Coyote. And there's really no excuse to go an earlier model than that. I mean, Coyote is really where the power is going to be found. Aftermarket support is pretty much unlimited with that platform. There are some caveats with the Mustang, though. First of all, they are tough to find that haven't been ragged out. If you are budget-minded and you find a Mustang that fits within a budget of, say, I don't know, about 10 grand, 12 grand, I wouldn't buy it. The chances of that thing being torn up are extremely good. I've seen quite a few examples of those cars that people have bought. They get them on the cheap. They think they're getting away with murder. And the reality is that you're not. That car is, if you find a good one, they are absolutely bomb-proof. And that's the beauty of the Mustang. A lot of people will talk about the LS platform being bulletproof, bomb-proof, nuke-proof, foolproof. It's proof of everything. But the problem is they aren't. I've seen plenty of LSs let go far before a Coyote would. So just know that going into it. Chances are, if you're buying a Mustang, the engine's going to run forever. It's everything else that's attached to that engine that's falling apart as you stare at it. So if you're looking for a 2011, 12, 13, or 14, just know that going into it. Find the cleanest example that you can possibly find of that platform and just let her rip when it comes to mods. Long tube headers, tune, E85, full exhaust, the list goes on. You don't have to do much of those cars to get a lot out of them. Always go with a gear swap because, yes, they are gutless without a gear. Sorry, it's a facts of life if you're sticking NA. But everybody knows how well Mustangs take to boost. Just don't forget about the oil pump gears or you will be reminded of them in a catastrophic way. So last but not least, the one that everybody forgets about, the platform that nobody gravitates to unless you're from the South, that's to find yourself a Silverado 1500 short bed with pick your V8. It doesn't matter. If I were to get started today modding a car, modding a platform, truck in this case, it would almost have to be a truck. There is so much room under the hood of a truck that it's super easy to work on. It's front engine, rear drive. The weight bias is kind of crappy, so they're real happy about lightening up the tires, and your cost to get one is fairly low. You can find an LS-powered short bed Chevrolet truck for about, I don't know, $7,500 to $10,500. Damn, that leaves a lot of meat on the bone for strokers, heads, cam, intake, throttle body, transmission, torque converter, rear gear, wheels, tire, you name it. You can buy a truck, throw the kitchen sink at it, and have that thing handle as well as you would hope a truck would handle, launch as hard as a truck can launch on a tire. there's plenty of guys running around with, I don't know, $16,000 in a truck that are running deep into the 11s without a whole lot of drama. They just keep going over and over and over again. Because it's so easy to work on, because they're so easily accessible, because they are such darlings of the aftermarket, how could you possibly go wrong? Plus, with a truck, you get the added option of building something for off-roading. So, yeah, there's that. So, I don't know. Post up your comments. Let me know what you think. Wanted to answer that question because I've been getting that off and on for about the last year or so. Figured I'd put something out there for you. Let me know what you guys are working on. You guys got a budget build you're putting together? I'd love to hear about that, hot rod. And that's a wrap on this one. Adios.